Welcome to 1189, an online Bible commentary. My name is Tyler Marson, and today we're taking a look at Leviticus chapter 13. The last two chapters have dealt with laws surrounding ritual, uncleanness, and impurity. And this chapter will continue that section, instructing the priests on what to do with someone who's been deemed unclean because of leprosy. We'll see that the priests employ many signs and tests to pronounce someone as either unclean or clean from whatever ailment they're facing. But for us today, notice how these medical instructions represent the way that sin can infect and spread through even our own bodies. And notice how the excommunication of the lepers was harsh, but it was necessary to keep the rest of God's people pure and safe. That's the same excommunication we experience when our sin breaks fellowship with God. Of course, what we ultimately need then is someone to pronounce us clean and healed. Then the Lord spoke to Moses and to Aaron, saying, "When a man has on the skin of his body a swelling or a scab or a bright spot, and it becomes an infection of leprosy on the skin of his body, then he shall be brought to Aaron the priest or to one of his sons the priests. The priest shall look at the mark on the skin of the body, and if the hair in the infection has turned white, and the infection appears to be deeper than the skin of his body, it is an infection of leprosy. When the priest has looked at him, he shall pronounce him unclean." So for an ancient culture, or any culture without modern medicine, if there was someone who had a disease that was as infectious as leprosy, it could wipe out an entire people group if it was left untreated. Now it's worth noting that what's translated as leprosy here in Leviticus could refer to what we now call Hansen's disease, or it could also refer to many other debilitating bacterial skin infections. Being pronounced unclean as a leper meant being barred from worshiping in the assembly, but it was necessary and it was for the good of everyone. And of course that's practically important so that the disease doesn't spread, but physical health in the community was also symbolically emblematic of spiritual health in the community. David Guzik, in his Enduring Word commentary, specifically tracks how the symptoms of leprosy mirror the way sin spreads in our lives. What start off as harmless, painless skin discolorations can slowly spread all throughout the body, numbing its victim, deforming them until they've practically decayed. And leprosy, like sin, can appear to have been eradicated only to come back with a vengeance later. So because the threat of leprosy was practically significant, and because it was symbolically and thematically significant, the priests were ordained to deal with it. But if the bright spot is white on the skin of his body, and it does not appear to be deeper than the skin, and the hair on it has not turned white, then the priest shall isolate him who has the infection for 7 days. The priest shall look at him on the 7th day, and if in his eyes the infection has not changed, and the infection has not spread on the skin, then the priest shall isolate him for 7 more days. The priest shall look at him again on the 7th day, and if the infection has faded, and the mark has not spread on the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him clean. It is only a scab, and he shall wash his clothes and be clean. Of course, not everything that looked like leprosy was leprosy, but the priests had instructions to take each and every case seriously. And God, pretty miraculously, protects his people by instructing them to quarantine. By the way, that's 3,000 years before germ theory was discovered. And the quarantine takes place under 2 rounds of 7 days to make sure the infection hasn't spread. And it's specifically 7 days to continue that thematic symbolism of the Sabbath cycles. Only after these quarantines can one be cleansed and pronounced clean, meaning they can enter the worship assembly again. It also reinforces the biblical motif of testing, sort of like how in Genesis 8, Noah tested to see if there was dry land after the flood, or how in Genesis 22, God tested Abraham to see if he would give up Isaac. But if the scab spreads further on the skin after he has shown himself to the priest for his cleansing, he shall appear again to the priest. The priest shall look, and if the scab has spread on the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is leprosy. Now the quarantines don't catch every case. Sometimes the leprosy comes back, or begins to spread only after those 2 weeks of isolation. It's symbolic of the way that sin can always creep back up in our lives. What starts off as harmless fun can oftentimes take a long time to reveal its destructive nature. And at that point, the priest has to declare the person as unclean once again. Now, most of the rest of the verses in this chapter address what the priest should actually be looking for when performing these tests. Verses 9 through 11 address what to look for when the leprosy starts as a swelling sore. Verses 12 through 17 tell what to do when the leprosy has spread through someone's whole body. Verses 18 through 23 deal with leprosy that's caused by an infected boil, and verses 24 through 28 deal with leprosy that's caused by an infected burn. Verses 29 through 37 give instructions on what to do when leprosy is found on the scalp, underneath hair, or under a beard. Verses 38 and 39 deal with leprosy that appears as eczema or bright white spots. And finally, verses 40 through 44 show how to spot leprosy that's made someone's hair fall out. In all of these circumstances, the afflicted individual is quarantined for 7 days to see if that spot spreads or not. If it doesn't, then they are pronounced clean and can worship with the people. But if it does spread, well, as for the leper who has the infection, his clothes shall be torn, and the hair of his head shall be uncovered, and he shall cover his mustache and cry, "Unclean, unclean." He shall remain unclean all the days during which he has the infection. He is unclean. He shall live alone. His dwelling shall be outside the camp. The unclean lepers are required to live outside the city, announcing their status as unclean to anyone who might pass by. They tear their clothes, shave their heads, and cover their mustaches, that is, their mouths. And these were public symbols of grief, showing that they were grieving their impurity. It's tragic, but it has to be done for the survival of everyone. But there's hope in that the separation only lasts as long as the infection does. If a leper has been healed and has been pronounced clean by a priest, then they're able to enter the city again and worship with the people. And the symbolism at play is that this is exactly where the people are in their relationship with God at this moment in the biblical narrative. Sin has corrupted and spread among all of God's creation, and God has to separate himself from it until there's one who can come and heal us, who can come and pronounce us clean. Now, the rest of this chapter deals with leprous marks or mold that might appear on clothes. The people's clothes during this time were made from wool and animal skins, so a skin infection or any other type of mold might pop up. Like the tests for leprosy in people, the clothing items that had growths or marks on them were to be set aside for 7 days, after which the priest would investigate and see if the mark had spread. If it had spread, the clothing item would be burned with fire. And if it hadn't spread, then the mark would be cut out, the garment would be washed, and it would be quarantined for 7 more days. And after a few more repetitions to make sure that mark didn't come back, the clothes would either be pronounced as clean and washed, or pronounced as unclean and burned. And so once again, as with all the purity standards for ancient Israel, we see practical health advice overlapping with symbolism about God's holy nature. You and I will probably never be affected by leprosy. We might go our entire lives without catching it or even knowing anyone who's caught it. And even if we did, with modern antibiotics, we would not have to live with the fear of becoming deformed. However, we all deal with the problem of sin. When we give sin even a little foothold in our lives, before we know it, it's taken over our entire body, infecting us. It numbs us to the pain we're actually experiencing. It makes us ignorant of the pain we're causing others. Slowly, over time, it eats away at our soul and destroys us. When we're living in that sin, we have to be separated from God's holiness. We can't risk tainting His perfect love, but all praise goes to Him who finds us, heals us, cleanses us, pronounces us clean, and allows Him to live with Him again. Thanks for watching 1189. I hope that you have a good day, and God bless.